Yeah, you guys got that many already. It's crazy how quick it goes.
Guess we're live. How's it going, everybody? Jamie McDonald here, and I've got my good friend and fellow Vanguard and NiSi Pro, Mark Miller here. Mark's been on the show before, so Mike is out this week, and Mike's tending to an ill family member, and just anybody who's watching who knows Mike, and even if you don't know Mike, just keep his family in your thoughts, and good vibes, juju, prayers, whatever it is you do. If you shake feathers over your head, you know, whatever it is, just send that Mike's way. I'm sure he'd appreciate it. So, hey, how's it going, Mark? It's been a little while since we've hung out.
No, I'm doing good. Just getting through this winter. It's the most depressing time of year for me. Not terribly motivated with the gray skies and whatnot, but
oh, I know it's a pain. Like, you know, I don't mind clouds. I love clouds, you know, and you being, you know, a filter user like me, long exposures with clouds are great, but the clouds that we have in Michigan in the wintertime they're not conducive to long exposure.
No, just pure gray skies, nothing else.
It's like the world's largest softbox, I guess. It's pretty ugly. So before we get like headlong into the show, just want to do like a couple of things first. First, I want to say, if anybody's watching and has questions, hopefully you're on the YouTube channel, and there should be a chat window there that you can throw your questions into. Always glad to answer questions as we go through the episodes. I want to do a really quick plug about the Patreon thing that we're doing. So, hey, how's it going, Mike from Illinois? So the Patreon thing that Mike and I are doing, if you swing over to patreon.com/Mirrorless Minutes, I won't go over it here, but you can just read why we're doing a Patreon effort, what we're trying to gain from that. And we've got a couple of supporters already, so that's pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about that. I won't drag it out any longer. Just if you get a moment, swing over to patreon.com/Mirrorless Minutes, and you can see what we're trying to do over there. And how's it going, Jeff and Tammy? So you're getting a full house in the chat room there. That's good. And so tonight's episode, originally I was going to do it with Mike and Mark. So I was going to have like the three of us do this thing because we've all worked together throughout the year. And I thought it would be fun to do, you know, like we always do an image share. And because we're close to the end of the year, I thought maybe like a recap, you know, like some of your highlights from 2017. And like I said, sadly, Mike can't make it tonight. The more important matters than sitting in front of this camera or this computer talking to people. So it's going to be Mark and I. We're going to share some images that are kind of like highlights of our photographic year, I guess. And that's kind of probably going to be most of it. So if you're an audio listener, there's probably only one other thing that's going to be interesting to you, other than maybe if you like listening to descriptions of photographs. If you've got a great you know, imagination, I guess that might be cool. The one other thing that I'm going to talk about before we start sharing these photos is, and I don't know if I'm supposed to do this or not, but I'm going to do it anyways, kind of let the cat out of the bag a bit. Mike and I have pretty much solidified our Atlanta workshop. I can give you dates now that this workshop is going to take place on. And if it's something that sounds interesting to you, if you're not a member of the Mirrorless Adventures meetup group, I suggest you swing over to the meetup website, meetup.com, and just do a search for Mirrorless Adventures and be a part of our meetup group. So this Atlanta workshop, it's going to be in the spring. And if I'm looking away from you, it's because I'm reading it off of the other monitor over here. So it's going to be a multi-day event. Obviously, it's going to kick off Friday, May 18th. And we'll run Saturday, May 19th, as well as, you know, Friday, May 18th. We're going to do a partial day there. And it'll conclude or wrap up on Sunday, the 20th. So May 18th through 20th. There'll be things happening all 3 days. I'm not going to run through everything that we're doing here, but there will be a couple of excursions. It's going to take you from the city into the countryside. So it kind of follows that same format that got Mike and I started on doing workshops. And we'll also have a classroom session at the end. And the classroom session is fun. It's a blast. It's an opportunity for everybody to sit down together. We can go over post-processing together. So everybody can kind of get a feel for some different ways to approach processing images. And then we do an image share. It's not a critique. It's just a a really laid back way for people to share some of their favorite images that they shot over the course of the past couple of days on this workshop. It'll be a blast. So again, it's not on the meetup page yet. Mike sent it to me, the rough draft here. We're just kind of finalizing some verbiage, and then it's probably going to go up within the next week. So reserve your spot. It'll be cool. Pretty inclusive event here. But again, May 18th, 19th, and 20th in Atlanta, Georgia. So that's that. Sorry, Mike, if I wasn't supposed to tell everybody. I just suck at keeping secrets. I'm one of those people that I get excited about stuff, and I just spill the beans. It's amazing I haven't leaked any Olympus gear news in the past because I get so excited about stuff. But anyways, sorry, Mark. I get talking, and
you're good.
If you need to interrupt me, if you need to say, hey, Jamie, just slow down. I want to talk for a second. Just say, shut up, dude.
I saw some of the details of this workshop, and I can honestly say it's going to be awesome. I'm pretty jealous of some of those locations. So
now if we could get Mark to come down, it'd be even better. It'd be like totally killer workshop. So how about this, Mark? How about you do the image share? I'll let you kick it off and kind of share some of your highlights of 2017 with everybody. And he'll just kind of tell you, where the shot was taken, what equipment he was using, stuff like that. So
sure, I'll tell you whatever I can remember. All right. All right. You see what we got here? The Pier up on the screen?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So this was, I believe it was late January or early February this year. And I went down to Marco Island with my wife on one of her business trips and got to run around that area. And so one night while we were there, we went over to Naples, and this is the Naples Fisherman Pier, and wanted to catch sunset there. There was probably about 20-mile-an-hour winds. It was way windier and cooler than I would have liked it to have been, but we did get a pretty cool sunset. So I took several shots, different angles. This is one that I really liked. I just kind of went up underneath the pier and set the tripod down in the water and took a few shots. I just really liked the way this one turned out, kind of with a little bit of streaky clouds, the milky water, and the sun kind of glaring through the legs there in the pier. I'm a sucker for the oceans and the lakes and being around the water. So anytime I can get around it, that's usually what I'm going to shoot. Love doing long exposures and using the filters that I've got from NiSi. So it was a great opportunity while we were down there. The next image that I've got here, this was from a pretty epic trip that I was fortunate enough to go on with Olympus. They flew myself and a few other influencers out to Whistler for the ski and snowboard festival. And while we were there for the three and a half days, we went on some different excursions. They took us around the area to shoot. And this one is called Trainwreck, and there's a whole lot of history about it. You can Google it, but the long or short version is a train back, I think it might have been in the 50s or 60s, maybe not, went off the tracks with a heavy load and was scattered throughout the woods. And when they came in to try to remove the wreckage, they deemed it too difficult and dangerous, so it just kind of got left out there. And over time, people came in and did a lot of cool graffiti on them. You've got mountain bikers that actually ride, and that's what this little bridge-looking thing coming off the top is. Mountain bikers ride and go off the tops of them, and it's a pretty awesome scene. We're out in the middle of the woods. It takes a pretty good hike to get back there. But it's well worth it if you're ever out in that area. The next one is another shot of Trainwreck, and that's one of the guys that I met out there that was flown out with us. His name was Reed, and just once again, one of the coolest places I've ever got to see, just this big train wreck out there in the woods, and awesome graffiti, and he's kind of shooting. That one's hanging off the edge of a cliff there. So not totally safe around it, but pretty cool to see. This next one, this was on our last day in Whistler, and we were actually heading back to the airport, and we got the car driver to make a few stops along the way. And I can't remember exactly where this was, but it was getting closer to Vancouver, and we had some really heavy cloud and wispy clouds that morning, and this was just a cool area overlooking kind of a little bay river here with the mountains off in the background. And I just thought it was going to make a pretty epic black and white shot. So I just took it. There's not a whole lot going on there other than just really cool contrast. This next one was from early spring. This was actually one of Jamie's events over at Camera Mall. We went out to do some live composite, and we were up on a parking garage looking down on downtown Ann Arbor. I'm a sucker for live composite. Love shooting it whenever I can. It was a pretty fun night out there, a little cool. But I was able to use, it was actually the night we got our Alta Pro 2 tripods with the neck that is able to angle out. And so I had this up on the edge of the building, actually, with the camera hanging over the street. I had a few people there kind of nervous about it, but it's a pretty cool shot. Once again, just really love doing live composites. So. This next one, this was right before summer. I was out trying to do some storm chasing, and this was probably a couple miles from my house, and the storm was moving around pretty quick, and I was just trying to get out ahead of it to get the big clouds and maybe catch some lightning if we got to it, but unfortunately never got any lightning at all this year, actually. So this is just a cool shot I like. The road kind of going off into the sunlight off behind the storm. Once again, not a whole lot going there, just really like the final image. This next one was the same night, and the only reason I put it in here is because it's actually the first time I ever shot a rainbow. Kind of got a little bit of a double rainbow going there, but it's pretty cool to see it go from end to end over this field. And this was actually right around the corner from my house. I live out in the country, and just kind of lucky I was driving back from chasing the storms and saw this popping up. So pretty excited to finally get a shot of a rainbow.
Let me interrupt real quick. So, okay, two things. Number one, the mic is like rubbing real hard on your shirt. I don't know if it sounds like you're doing jumping jacks. But so the other thing, the rainbow shot. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you said that was like your first time shooting a rainbow, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. That's always exciting.
Yeah, like I said, I've actually never. I don't know if I've ever had a camera on me when I've seen a rainbow. I'm usually not out and about a lot when I see them, but this was just kind of one of those lucky timing things where I was heading home from chasing the storm and saw this thing up ahead, and I was like, oh man, I got to find a spot to try and shoot that. And
it's pretty awesome because you've become, a really skilled and good photographer, and you were at that point in your photography before you shot your first rainbow. Everybody else shoots a bunch of crappy photos of a rainbow. You know what I mean? So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And like I said, it was just really lucky timing for me. So it turned out pretty good. I was kind of excited to get it. So this next one, this is moving into the summer. This was July. My wife and I took a road trip up north, and this is Old Mission Point. Lighthouse, and I had never seen it until we got there, and I was kind of disappointed that it looks like a little church up on the beach. But and you can't really shoot it with the water unless you're shooting from behind and like over that little fence there. So I instead went out and was standing on the edge of the water to shoot this, and there was enough cloud movement where I could do a long exposure. I think this was roughly about a minute long with a 10-stop ND to get the clouds streaking over top of it. And I didn't realize up there, apparently they're known for these terrible black flies that bite the heck out of you. And so this whole time I'm trying to get this shot, there's literally, 10, 15 flies biting the crap out of my legs. My wife's sitting there laughing at me. I'm slapping at them, trying to get a shot and keep the camera still on the tripod. And I was just kind of rushing around. Finally got one I liked, and was like, all right, let's get the hell out of here. So, but it turned out pretty cool. This next one this was very late summer, fall. I drove over to St. Joe's one afternoon after work on a Friday. I was going to meet our friend Jerry James over there, and he stood me up and apparently had better things to do. So I was there to shoot sunset, and we didn't get a whole lot of clouds or anything, just kind of one of those orange fireball days where the sun just goes down and there's not a lot going on. But just after the sun had gone under there, the sailboat was kind of sailing away off the end of the pier. And I just thought it was a cool shot to get. And when I edited it, I kind of put some highlights up in the sky and down toward the sailboat just to kind of emphasize, the focal point to that area. And like I said, I got that, and then planned on staying there later to try and shoot some stars or the Milky Way. And there was a little bit too much light pollution around that area to get anything good. So stayed up there till about 11:30 or so, and then finally bailed out and drove home that night. And this next one, this was actually when you and I met up after work, right before our workshop. And I can't remember, I think it was Minard Mills, Mill Pond or something like that. We were just playing with NiSi filters there, had this neat little dam. So did a long exposure, tried to get some of the fall colors that were starting to pop out at that time off in the background, and pretty cool cloud reflections in the water. Nothing terribly exciting, but like the overall result. And this next one was from our workshop the last day. We had epic wind and huge waves crashing as we jumped town to town, hitting the lighthouses. And down in Grand Haven, this is my favorite one that I was able to capture there, with the water crashing over the fog house. And when I put this into the computer, the sky was still had a little bit too much of a blue hue to it. I didn't really like the look of that, so I desaturated all the blue out of the picture to kind of get a darker gray background to get kind of highlight the waves crashing there. And I really like that. It was a fun day. Like I said, lots of wind, lots of rain. We were soaked by the time we were done, but it was well worth it getting some of these shots. It was the first time I'd ever been over to the west side on a windy day like that. And the final one, just another long exposure around the water. I know you've got one like this. Hopefully you're not sharing it tonight, but I finally figured I'd pull it out. This one had a 10-stop, or not, I believe the 6-stop ND on there, stacked with a medium grad filter. And this was at Point Betsie Lighthouse. Just absolutely beautiful teal waters there. Probably one of my favorite places on Lake Michigan to go visit. And once again, we didn't get a sunset at all the whole weekend while we were there, and that was kind of the goal. But we made the best of it, and we had a little bit of color in the sky, enhanced with a little bit of Lightroom to help it pop And like I said, one of my favorite images from that weekend as well. So that's what I got. That was pretty much my year. Everything I've been shooting since the workshop has been primarily portraits. So I don't really have anything else in the last month and a half other than a lot of pictures of people. So that's what I got going.
Very cool. Yeah, it's funny. While you're sharing this, I'm watching the chat room, and yeah, it's funny. Bob Panic is mentioning it now. We're getting spammed by porn. So that's a new thing for Mirrorless Minutes. I think we finally made it.
All right.
Getting spammed by porn, I guess. It's anyway. So no, great shots. It definitely has been a cool year, without a doubt. And it was good to do a workshop with you, and I'm really looking forward to 2018 and lining up at least another workshop, maybe two. So if you liked Mark's shots, from here in Michigan, keep that in mind. I'm sure that we'll definitely do something along those same lines. Maybe we'll get a little bit better weather this year if we do, or in 2018 when we do it. The weather wasn't exactly ideal, but as you can see, it doesn't matter necessarily how the weather is. There's always a way to get something great, no matter what. You just have to be willing to put in the work to do it. So
brave the elements a little bit.
So I'll do mine. I only have 10 images to share. So Mark literally almost did one per month. He kind of killed it there. So let me see. Let me get this rolling here. Now this first one, isn't exactly like some technically marvelous photo, but it has some significance to me because if you're a longtime follower of the show and you remember at any point, like at this time last year, I was without a job. I had lost my job with an employer I'd been with for 20 years. I had worked in that same field pretty much my entire adult life from when I was 19 years old into my 40s. And then I find myself without a job right before Christmas. So boo to my previous employer for doing that to me. But it actually worked out so much better than I could have ever expected, because what I ended up doing is transitioning over into a completely different career path, one that's right up my alley, and that is marketing and social media and photography as part of my day job now as well. And this image here is of City Hall in Philadelphia, and this was taken on a work trip. I never had a work trip before for a day job and had plenty of free time every evening to go out and shoot. And we were staying right there on the left at the Ritz-Carlton. So all I had to do was walk out of the hotel right into the median of the road there and shoot City Hall. So that's why I'm sharing this photo, not so much necessarily because it's a great photograph, but it's indicative of what photography can do. And that is, it captures those moments that have some meaning to you. So that's exactly what this one is. It was a new chapter in my life, and I had to capture it with a camera. And this was shot with the Pen F. So that's what I traveled with for this work excursion. I was gone for 4 or 5 days in Philadelphia, and I brought the Pen F and 12 millimeter f2, the 75 millimeter f1.8, and the 17 millimeter f1.8. And this is shot with the 12 millimeter. This is handheld, long exposure too. So not super long, but long enough to get this vehicle going by on the right-hand side and giving me some light trails. The next shot was shot with Mark Miller. So that first shot was shot early spring. This was just a little bit later in the spring, and you can tell because the trees have no leaves on them in the background. And this was just after getting set up with NiSi filters, kind of being brought on board as an ambassador for them. So this was actually my very first excursion out with the NiSi filter system. And this was shot with the EM1 Mark II, and this is with the reverse graduated neutral density filter, and I think a 4-stop as well to just kind of stretch out the exposure time a little bit. And this is on the 7 to 14 millimeter Pro, all the way at its widest end, of course, at 7 millimeters. Definitely one of the greatest mornings out shooting I had this year was meeting up with Mark in the dark, walking out into this field to shoot this spot. The next shot is probably my most favorite urban shot I've taken to date. And this was when I was teaching at the Out of Chicago conference in, when is that? June. I think it's in June when we do that. And I was there, and I had several friends with me. Seth Dimstra, who was on the show last week, he was there, and we had stopped and eaten lunch, and we were walking back to the Out of Chicago conference. I think I had something that I was supposed to be doing there a little bit later. And we walked across the street and right over this puddle. And then on the left-hand side, you can kind of see there's, I don't know, the sidewalk or like an overhang. And everybody just walked past the puddle and onto the sidewalk and started walking. And I saw the puddle and took 2 steps backwards. I crouched down and just dropped my camera to my side, put it really low to the mud puddle there, and tried to center up the horizon line as best I could to keep it like really symmetrical. Fired off a shot, didn't like the way it looked, so lowered back the camera down one more time and took this second shot. And this is with the Pen F with the 17 millimeter f1.8, which is kind of like my walking around town, shooting street, portable setup. So if I'm in an urban center, an urban location, it's usually the Pen F that I've got with me and a handful of primes. And I just processed this with one of my custom presets that I have. So pretty floored with this just because it looks very Inception-like. Actually, I kind of titled the image Inception. So the next shot was further along in the year. It's actually towards the beginning of the summer. And I met up with my buddy, Jerry James. He doesn't stand me up when we go to meet locations to shoot. I guess he just stands up Mark at locations. But we went out in hopes of shooting some sort of inclement weather that looked like it might be heading in towards shore. And it never showed up. Like, we never got any kind of storms. There was a little bit of rain that stayed way off in the distance. But I just thought it'd be kind of cool to, just shoot people. I don't shoot people normally, but there was this father and son that were out there shooting. And I was just watching this little kid with a fishing pole that was like twice as long as he is tall, and just watching him fire that lure back and forth out into the water. It was fun to just watch. And by exposing for the background, I knew it would instantly throw him into silhouette. So I just sat there and waited for birds to come into the scene because they were all around us. And I just waited for some to get, into my frame where I wanted them to be for the most part. And again, exposing for the background kind of made it easier to see the rays that were coming down from the clouds. And again, just finished up and processed with one of my presets. But this was taken with the EM1 Mark II and I believe the 12-100 f4 Pro, which kind of is like always on the camera now for me. The next one was probably another month later. And this one, when it comes to the Aurora and me, it's rarely like a planned event. It seems to always be, I have intentions of shooting something else and then just having my mind blown by Mother Nature. So this was a night that I went out with Jerry James again, and our buddy Jason Helmer was there, and I think a friend of ours, David Behrens. So, all Michigan photographers, all talented, skilled photographers. And we all met up and decided to go to Silver Lake Sand Dunes on the west side of the state and shoot the Milky Way. And just like an evening I had out with Mark and a few other friends where we ventured out in the middle of the night to shoot the Milky Way, we started off shooting the Milky Way to the south, but there were clouds rolling in. And, it's getting kind of annoying to have these clouds come in and obscure the Milky Way. So I turned around to face north just to do like a long exposure, star trails facing the North Star and get those nice concentric rings forming with a long exposure. And as soon as I started the shutter, I kind of noticed this haze off in the distance. And then I started the exposure, and immediately the purples and greens started to show up, and I get right on my phone immediately. And as soon as I get my phone on and wake it up, I get a message from some of the other people in our crew that were about a mile away from us further into the dunes. Jerry is messaging me back saying, "Hey dude, turn to the north, there's northern lights." So went there for the Milky Way and ended up with northern lights, which I take northern lights over the Milky Way any day. So this was shot with the EM1 Mark II and the 7-14 millimeter. And this is not, a lot of people ask, hey, do I do live composite with northern lights? Nope. You want to do like a really high ISO and shorter exposures if you want to get some sort of shape in the northern lights, if you're in a place where you can actually see the shape. Or if the case like this shot right here, We really couldn't see much banding or anything like that in the Northern Lights, so I was content with doing a little bit longer exposures. So this is ISO 6400, and I believe it was probably about like 15 seconds at, and I was again at 7 millimeters. The foreground illumination was, I think from, if I'm not mistaken, it was either from mine or my buddy Jason Helmer's phone that was kind of helping to illuminate everything in the foreground there. So this one's a little bit of post-processing in it, you know, to darken up the sky a little bit more. And I tried to reduce the light pollution on the horizon as well. And of course, you know, bump the saturation a little bit, but definitely a fun night. And again, you never know what you're going to get when you just take off out into the countryside to shoot, you know, so just be prepared for anything. Another trip on the west side of the state. In the summer, I spend a lot of time on the west side of the state. I have a camper over there. So every chance I get on the weekends while over at our camper, I'm venturing off to the lake shore, usually meeting up with Jerry James because he lives over there. So met up with Jerry on this night and headed up to a place called Whitehall. They don't have like the most picturesque lighthouse per se, but it's dark, and we were there for the Milky Way, and that's kind of what I've got in this shot here. I like to tell people that I do selfies. I shoot selfies, but I don't do like, you know, the Kim Kardashian selfie. It's always, I always show my best side, I guess, you know, it's always my back facing the camera. But I just threw the camera on a tripod. I had shot this scene once before without me in it, just so I knew what my exposure settings needed to be. And I set the timer on my camera to give me time to get in front of it. And I pulled out my trusty LED flashlight, which I think I recommended on the last show as far as like a gift idea. Pointed it up at the Milky Way and shot. So again, EM1 Mark II, the 7 to 14 millimeter Pro. And I think this is probably like at ISO 3200. And it's a little bit long exposure too, probably again, 10 or 15 seconds. Not easy to hold still for 10 or 15 seconds. And you can see a little bit of blur like in my hands and in my head. Somehow my pant legs stayed really still, but everything else had a little bit of wobble to it. So this was like, you know, midsummer towards late summer, probably July, maybe getting into August. Yes, Mark, I had to share one from Point Betsie Lighthouse from the workshop that Mark and I put on here in Michigan. And very similar to what Mark was shooting, it's kind of hard to go to this location and not shoot these breakwaters that jut out into the water. And I think my setup for this was same as the last shot. You kind of notice a trend here. EM1 Mark II, 7 to 14 millimeter. Using my NiSi filters though. So this is with the medium graduated ND filter and a 6-stop ND filter. The 6-stop, you know, slowed the exposure down long enough to kind of give you that milky, creamy water. And then the medium grad just kind of toned down the sky a little bit and helped bring out definition. And I just love how saturated and rich the rocks and the pebbles are in this. Definitely one of my favorite shots, probably of the entire year. And the weather was crap the whole time for this event and this day shooting. It was miserable. And I don't know if anybody really understood or realized or expected, you know, that they would be able to get good shots on this day. But if you go out and you know how to approach it the right way, you can get great shots in just about any condition. This shot was really recent. Mark Miller had said he wanted to do a meetup in Detroit. So I said, all right, I'll set one up on the meetup group on Mirrorless Adventures, and got a hold of Mike Baining, who knows the area well, him and his friend Lou. So Mark planned, I published, and Mike organized the location, and we all shot here in Detroit along the Detroit River, shooting the Ambassador Bridge. So we are facing up towards the Renaissance Center, which you can see on the left-hand side, and the city lights on the right are Canada, our friends to the north. So this was shot with the EM1 Mark II, 7 to 14 millimeter. And I do believe I have a NiSi 6-stop ND filter on, or 4-stop maybe. I think it was 4-stop ND. It was already pretty dark anyway, so I didn't need to do much as far as darkening even more to extend out the exposure time. and again, processed with a custom preset that I've got for Lightroom. And I know if Jerry James is watching, he's going to be like, I can't believe he's sharing a freaking owl photo, because if you live here in Michigan, or I don't know, I guess all over this year, snowy owls are everywhere. It seems like there's this massive migration happening this year, more so than in years past. And I had the opportunity to meet up with Jerry James and our buddy Jason Helmer. And Jason got us access to this location in Muskegon where these owls were at. So it was almost like cheating, shooting the owls there. There were so many of them, and we didn't get really close. I know this looks ridiculously close to this owl. This is shot with the 300 millimeter f4 with the MC14 teleconverter on it. So we're like 420 millimeters on micro four thirds, 840 millimeter full frame, you know, focal equivalent there. So I was a ways away. And when shooting the snowy owls, I kind of like the money shot is you want the yellow eyes. So most of the time these guys sit here with their eyes closed. So I just sat there and waited and waited and waited. And I shouldn't say guys because this is a gal. Sat there and waited for her to finally open her eyes and got that shot. And I also was lucky enough to get in the background behind her, there's a shoveler. It's a type of duck, and the owls there are eating these ducks. So I thought it was kind of cool to get that in the frame as well. Straight out of the camera. There's no editing with this one either. So it's just how it came out. And the last shot, again, I think Jerry James will be upset if he's watching this because I think he's tired of seeing train photos as well. It seems like we go through these flurries of things that get photographed here in Michigan. It was snowy owls for a while, and now it's the Polar Express. If you have children, or if you're a fan of Christmas movies, maybe you've seen the animated movie The Polar Express with I think Tom Hanks is in that. The train that's in that movie is modeled after this exact train right here. This is in Owasso, Michigan, and this train makes a couple of runs every weekend. I think 3 runs or 5 runs or something like that. And it doesn't go very far. It goes maybe 20 miles to a nearby town and then just gets pulled back and repeats the journey again. And I've been wanting to shoot this for a while because it's obviously, as you can tell by the image, it's a coal-driven train. So you get this huge billows of black coal-created smoke, which if you're a climate change person, I don't want to hear about it. I just wanted to take pictures of this train just because it's so cool. So I had a friend of mine, Scott Shields, who actually works for the Steam Engine Association, or Steam Engines of America. I don't remember the name of the organization he works for. But he's actually worked on this train and been really involved with it. And he met up with me and my family, took my wife and youngest son to see this and photograph this. And he kind of set us up in some key locations. So I was really excited to finally get to shoot this and actually to know where to be to shoot this. And this is shot with the EM1 Mark II and the 12-100. And I had 2 cameras with me. I used the 12-100 when the train was further off in the distance. And as it got probably another 10 feet closer than that, I switched to the camera with the 7-14 millimeter on it. But that was last weekend. So that was kind of like the most recent thing that I've shot lately that was kind of a key thing or a big thing for me. All of the images that I shared here were important to me, you know, in one way or another, whether it was a big life-changing moment like my first photo that I shared because I had a career change in the middle of my life, or whether it was, you know, shooting in Chicago as being part of the Out of Chicago, or working with Mark on the workshop. And this last photo here, having always wanted to shoot these trains and to be able to do it with my family there. So really cool. It's definitely been a good year for me. I have no complaints. My photographic journey thus far has been great. Had a few hiccups, you know, otherwise in life, you know, but other than that, it's been good, and it's been really fun, and I'm really looking forward to 2018 to see what 2018 has in store. So I'm just going to look here in the chat room really quick and see if there are any questions. Let's see. No questions, lots of comments, but I appreciate you guys talking to us here and letting us know where you're coming in from. on Vancouver Island. Wow. Okay. Yeah. And no snow. How do I have like 6 or 7 inches of snow and you have none? I bet you've got rain though. So I guess that's it. We're like 40 minutes in, 10 minutes past our normal thing. I like to talk a lot. I didn't give Mark any time to really talk other than sharing photos.
No worries.
Do you have anything you wanna plug before we get off the old interwebs here?
No, nothing going on yet. Everything's 2018. Looking forward to a good year, hopefully. So
definitely. All right, you guys. So again, I apologize if you're an audio listener. This episode probably is going to be boring, except for the Atlanta workshop news. So thanks for watching, you guys, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with the last episode of the year. Am I doing my math right here? I think we got one more episode left. Yeah. So we'll talk to you guys later. Hey, thanks, Mark, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
See you guys.
Yeah.